I am Savarkar, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar. Yes, you have heard my name. Some call me a Veer, a freedom fighter who sacrificed everything for Ma Bharati, while some consider me a coward and just remember me by a few letters that I wrote. Here is my story. I was born on 28th May 1883 in Bombay Presidency in British India. Born a Chitpavan Brahmin in a traditional Marathi family, raised listening to the galore of the gods and our legendary clan's history, the tales of how our ancestors had fought for Swaraj against the Mughals and achieved it. We had still not made peace with the fact that after defeating the Mughals and the Nizams and establishing Hindu Padshahi across India, we had fallen to the English. Our heads were still high with the glory instilled in us by the greatness of Shivaji and Bajirao, sacrifices of Baji Prabhu, Sambhaji, Manikarnika, and Sadashivrao, rule of Ahilyabai, and resistance of Tarabai, the deeds of tearing through the slavery and re-establishment of Hindu Swaraj. Every time we chanted Har Har Mahadev, we could see the saffron flags reflecting the glory of Hindu civilization. But alas, it was a different time. Freedom once again was far away. The English were much smarter than the Islamic invaders. Unlike the Mughals, the British didn't attack our faith at first. It was education instead. They didn't enslave our girls. They learned to control our ruling elite classes instead. They didn't cut our janeu. They wrote such ill tales of our traditions as to invoke hatred in the hearts of Indians against our own glorious civilization. So I made up my mind, this life will be my sacrifice to motherland. Every step I took was treason for the English, for everything I did was an action against the British Raj. In my college days, I made India's first secret society named Mitra Mela, which was later known as Abhinav Bharat. Then, in 1906, I went to London to study and become a barrister. The sole purpose of going to London was to create a sphere of influential revolutionaries to work for Abhinav Bharat, who would be educated enough to fight the English in English style. The first step towards freedom was a necessary realization, and that was not possible without the right mindset. In 1909, I wrote The War of Indian Independence and awakened the consciousness of Indians to remind them that what had happened in 1857 was not treachery but the first freedom for Swaraj and Swadharma. When Mangal Pandey, with red eyes erupting with chants of Har Har Mahadev, and Rani of Jhansi, with fiery sword invoking Ma Bhavani, decided to take matters into their own hands, it was not an ordinary rebellion as the British wanted us to believe. It was a colossal sacrifice for Swaraj. Fearing the British, no one published my book in India. But the fight had to go on, and I managed and found publications in Germany. Our networks were spreading across the globe like a cobweb. We started to establish contact with foreign revolutionaries such as Ataturk of Turkey to create an international network of revolutionaries fighting the European colonial powers like the English. Then I met Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. Establishing contact with them helped us get manuals for explosives such as bombs and grenades, which we smuggled to India to fight against the British Raj. Using these manuals, Bengali revolutionary Sri Aurobindo Ghosh started a whole underground explosive manufacturing factory, which triggered a shiver down the British spine. While Indian National Congress was discussing minor leniencies instead of Swaraj and Swadharma, I knew the times were ripe for absolute freedom, which was only possible in the form of Purna Swaraj. No compromise with the English or the Islamists, who were opposed to the core of India, which was the Hindu civilization. Then my writings soon started to inspire revolutionaries. The British could not find a proper reason to arrest me, but they needed one. They feared my pen more than they ever feared the Mughal swords. Soon a series of assassinations of high British officials was linked to me. According to them, my writings invoked hatred against the English, and that inspired people to kill oppressive British officials. I was operating from Paris, fearing British arrest, but most of my networks were in London, so I had to think of a way to get there. But forget getting to the land of the English. The English were waiting for me on French railway station. Breaking all rules of sovereignty, British arrested me and put me in Cellular jail in Andaman and Nicobar on 27th June 1919. Cellular jail was dark. You couldn't see any living creature for days. Haunting sounds of inmates going crazy after months of this torture would instill my mind with fear of the same. But I couldn't be broken so easily. I had to raise the flame of rebellion in the hearts of Hindus. Chanting the sacred Vedic mantra and following practices of Patanjali Yoga Sutra kept me going in that haunted place. The food they gave us was worse than what we fed our dogs. The water they gave us to drink was worse than what we used to wash our clothes with. Vermins crawling over the inedible food was not a very uncommon sight. Soon, coming out of solitary confinement, I had to find a way to spark up the zeal for freedom. Most of the arrested people were brave but illiterate, full of anger against the colonialism, but lacked the knowledge of the identity of India and her past. So I began. Being a Brahmin, my primary duty was to educate wherever I was, in whatever condition I may be in. So I did. Carried on the duty my lineage was chosen for. The uneven walls of the prison cells became my board, and the tiny pebbles we could manage became my pen. The tales of glory of Bharat and the understanding of scriptures became their education. Day by day, the zeal of the Hindu nation was uniting the freedom fighters inside the prison. Pathan jailers couldn't but stop us from pursuing our noble zeal. Bashing the heads of innocent Hindu inmates was their favorite sport. Over the years, I lost my brother, friends, and many revolutionaries to this brutal torture. Many others became British loyalists, so they got some compensation from these punishments. But we carried on. Another threat was conversion. It was very common for Hindu inmates to be force-fed beef, made impure in the eyes of other Hindus, and then left with no choice but to accept the Arabic faith and the Prophet. The jailers took pride in this act, while the Hindus, the pure and the brave ones, who never bent, who stood by Dharma, saw converted ones as others, as outcasts, and those who have become a separate people. But how could my eyes unsee it? The curse of purity was to be totally unaccepting of impurity, and so the ones who were converted were not one less Hindu. They were one more enemy, one more soldier of the army of foreign faith, whose future generations won't think twice before raising the jihadi sword against us infidels. How could I forget the past our motherland has suffered? So, reconverting the forcefully converted ones, bringing them back to the Vedic Hindu faith, became one more of my professions. But by now, even my body was breaking down. Sickening diseases like malaria, losing weight, and fearing an overnight death became the routine. Dying of weight loss, suicide, or injuries was more common in the jail than any other place. Finally, by the 1920s, the First World War began, and the British were pressured to close down the inhumane jails, violating all human rights. Knowing this, most of inmates started to write mercy petitions, appealing for better treatment. So we did. But since I was the father of unrest in Andaman and Nicobar to the British, only my petitions were rejected. By 1921, the times had changed. The Cellular jail was to be shut down forever, and we were to be transferred to Ratnagiri jail in Maharashtra, where I once again started my rebellious activities against the British Raj. In 1923, I wrote Hindutva, defined the meaning and its necessity for the reawakening of Hindu civilization, which was necessary to unite Hindus, starting from Rigved's concept of the Hindu nation, furthering the tales of the divine Sindhu Saraswati civilization, which marked the origin of the Hindu nation thousands of years before Christ, Alexander, the Romans, the Chinese, Moses, or any other major civilization. Every line I wrote was a furtherance, a mere description of the sacred hymns narrated by the Maharishis. The Maharishis, who had once been under the graceful divinity of Adi Yogi Shiva himself. Then came time to tell the Hindu consciousness about the glory of the Maratha Empire, or should I say, the glory of Hindu Swaraj. The story of how the Turco-Mongol invaders were defeated into submission by Peshwas. The tales of Shivaji chanting Jai Ma Bhavani and tearing through the monster Afzal Khan. The same Afzal, the same Butchikan, the destroyer of idols, who found glory in destroying Devi Ma temples, was reminded that Hindu gods are not dead. Every time the chants of Har Har Mahadev and Jai Ma Bhavani rose amongst the Marathas, it was one more conquest over the foreign Muslim foes, one more conquest and unfurling of the saffron flag over the forts. Swaraj, the freedom of faith and freedom of the Hindu nation, was expanding faster than it ever did. What couldn't be achieved in 500 years by other Hindu kingdoms before the rise of Shivaji was achieved in just 70 years. From Shivaji establishing Swaraj in Raigad in Pune in the year 1674 to it expanding up to Afghan valleys of Kandahar in the 1750s, in just 70 years, a 1,000-year battle was won. The story of the glory of re-emergence of Hindu powers had to be told to the nation. In the year 1925, the book Hindu Pad Shahi retold all the glorious epochs from Shivaji to the Peshwas. The belief that we were not a defeated race, but a never-dying, never-ending one, rising from the ashes every time. When the foreign foes thought they had conquered us completely, we would rise once again.